I'm going to make the greatest argument you've ever heard with statistics, with facts, to keep Najee Harris as a Pittsburgh Steeler for his entire career. You know, a lot of people will say that Jerome Bettis is the best Pittsburgh Steeler running back in the team's history, but Najee is on course, on track to be better than Jerome Bettis. Just hear me out. Now, I'm only looking at Jerome Bettis' stats from the time he was a Steeler for 10 years, and then I'm going to get into Najee's. But for 10 years, Jerome Bettis only missed 3 or 4 games. And when you look at Jerome's attempts per season, anytime that Jerome Bettis had 300 carries or more, he ventured up to he went over the 1,000-yard mark. So in 1996, he had 320 attempts. He had 1,431 yards. In 1997, he had 375 attempts for 1,665 yards. In 1998, he had 316 carries for 1,185 yards. You get the point what I'm getting at. But anytime that Jerome Bettis had carries in the 200s, he rushed for 1,091 yards in 99. He rushed in 2001. He had 225 carries for 1,072 yards. In 2002, he had 187 attempts for 666 yards. 2003, 246 attempts for 811 yards. In 2004, 250 attempts for 941 yards. And in 2005, 110 attempts for 368 yards. You know, we all know that last season what Jerome's role was. The point I'm trying to make with Jerome Bettis, if his carries were in the 200s, he barely went over 1,000 yards or had just about 1,000 yards. His best year with carries in the 200s was in 2001. Jerome Bettis had 225 carries for 1,072 yards and 4 touchdowns. So Najee Harris, take all your emotions out of this. Take ESPN out of your head. Take it out of your head what another fan said. And first of all, Najee Harris has not missed a game of football in his 4-year career with the Steelers. Not one single game. And there's all this talk about bringing in Nick Chubb. Are you out of your mind? He's not even remotely the same player after Minkah Fitzpatrick hit him. Why would you bring in Nick Chubb and pay him? You're going to pay him almost the same amount of money as Najee Harris. Are we operating in reality anymore? It's like nothing is ever good enough. Steelers fans have a real forgetful memory real fast. Najee's rookie year, 2021, played 17 games, 307 attempts, averaged 3.9 yards a carry. He had 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns. 2022, 17 games, 272 attempts. He averaged 3.8 yards a carry, 1,034 yards. 2023, 17 games, attempts, 255, averaged 4.1 yards a carry, 8 touchdowns, 1,035 yards. In 2024, again, 17 games, 263 attempts. He averaged 4 yards a carry, 6 touchdowns, and 1,043 yards. What I'm trying to make you understand is this. I'm not trying to bore you to death with statistics. When Jerome Bettis and Najee Harris had carries in the 200s, almost completely identical, Najee Harris is the better running back. The only time that Jerome Bettis had, 1,430 yards is in 1996 is because he had 320 attempts. Every single time that Jerome Bettis went over 1,000 yards, from 1,100 to 1,400. His best year was 1,400 yards. Everything else was 1,100, 1,000, 1,300. You get the point. But anytime he ventured into that number of yards, he had over 300 carries. Najee Harris, if you gave him the ball 300 times in a season, he would have better numbers than Jerome Bettis. And I know what everybody's he doesn't break the long run. Listen to me and listen good. Jerome Bettis had Hines Ward, Plaxico Burress, Antoine Randall, team players, tough guys, blocking downfield for him to break off those, just Hines Ward alone, to break off those long runs. Who does Najee have? George Pickens, a guy that walks off the field during an interception, refuses to block, plays patty cake, lets his man through. How is Najee Harris going to break a long run with receivers blocking on the perimeter like that? He can't. You're not just going to outrun guys. That's not how it works. You need the wide receivers to block on the perimeter to break those long runs. If you look at these numbers, Najee Harris, with the same amount of carries, identical, is a better running back than Jerome Bettis. And look at the type of team Jerome Bettis played on. Those offensive lines were incredible. Incredible quarterback, Big Ben. Incredible. What is Najee playing with? Look at the offense. Listen, I love all these new young rookies we got. Things are going to change, so I'm not knocking you guys. But those offensive lines that Jerome Bettis play with, even those offensive linemen, our new guys, admire them. They're heroes to them. Those are guys that they looked up to, that they want to become. That's who Jerome Bettis was behind. Our guys are turning into that eventually. And look who Najee Harris is playing with at quarterback. Russell Wilson, Kenny Pickett. When you're on defense and the quarterback is no threat to complete a pass or run, it's easier for the defense to stop the running back in Najee Harris. He has a very, very super difficult job because the offense is now one-dimensional. The Steelers, the coaching staff, the Rooneys, the organization, the fans, everybody needs to stop with, if we just bring in another running back, he's going to be better than Najee automatically. Based on what? Najee Harris is the first running back in Steelers history to have 4 1,000 consecutive seasons of rushing for 1,000 yards. Ashton Genty's never even played a snap in the NFL. You think that by drafting a guy, he's going to come in and automatically be better than Najee Harris? You think that bringing a free agent in is automatically going to bring in more production than Najee Harris? No, it's not. That's not how this works at all. Yeah, sometimes you're going to get a stud. Saquon Barkley goes from the Giants to the... That's a different scenario. That's a totally different scenario. I mean, even Najee himself would probably tell you, yeah, if Saquon Barkley came here, forget it. My job, I'm probably going to be unemployed. But everybody else, Najee Harris is a top-tier running back. Top tier. And the stats don't lie. The stats prove it. He's playing with a quarterback that does not scare a defense whatsoever. He's playing with a rookie offensive line. Going into the playoffs, I kept saying we needed to start Jaylen Warren over Najee Harris, and I was only saying that because of the quarterback play, that we needed a different back to hit the hole differently than Najee. Najee's a different back. I'm not saying that he doesn't have speed. You got to keep feeding him. If you gave Najee Harris carries in the 300 carries or more, the way Jerome Bettis got the same amount of carries, this wouldn't even be an argument. His numbers would be outstanding. He'd have 1,500, 1,600 rushing yards, and his yards per carry would go up. Because as the game goes on, he gets better. I'm going to say it again. Najee Harris has better numbers than Jerome Bettis when you look at the carries. If Jerome Bettis got 200 carries in the 200s and Najee Harris, when you compare all those numbers, Najee Harris is a better running back than Jerome Bettis. And that for the amount of money that you're going to spend bringing in a free agent, you can work something out with Najee Harris to keep him a Steeler. Najee Harris needs to be re-signed. Stop all the madness. Stop listening to what everybody else says. Watch my video. Do some research. The numbers don't lie. Najee Harris is a better running back than Jerome Bettis. And everyone talks about Najee Harris, average per carry. He averages the same amount of yards per carry as Jerome Bettis, even in his prime. I'm not looking at Jerome's numbers from his final dwindling years. I'm looking at Jerome Bettis in his prime, and the numbers are identical. Who had a better quarterback? Who had better receivers? Who had a better offensive line? It's not even close, Jerome Bettis. So how are you putting this all on Najee Harris's shoulders like he's been a failure for the Pittsburgh Steelers when it's obvious he's been a blessing?